sun had just begun its slow descent behind the horizon, casting a soft amber glow on the small house nestled at the edge of town. Emma sat on the porch, her hands wrapped around a steaming cup of coffee, watching the delicate wisps of steam spiral into the cool evening air. She needed the warmth, needed the moment of silence. Inside, her son Toby was sitting on the floor, surrounded by a world of his own. His small hands traced the edges of his favorite toy truck, humming to himself in that quiet, almost inaudible way he did when he was lost in thought. At 7 years old, Toby had a way of disappearing into his own mind that both puzzled and amazed Emma. His world was one of patterns and sounds that no one else seemed to understand. She never minded the quiet. It was her normal now. What hurt, what really pierced her heart, were the people who never understood. Toby had autism. Emma had known from the moment they had first visited the doctor, when he was 3 years old. But hearing the words spoken out loud felt like a blow to her chest. The doctor's words were clinical and detached, but they were sharp and real. He may struggle with social interaction and communication, the doctor had said. And Emma had nodded, but inside, her heart had shattered. And then, as if on cue, her husband, David, had left. He had been there at first, holding her hands when the diagnosis was given, whispering reassurances in the days that followed. But as the days turned into weeks, and the weeks turned into months, the stress began to build. Emma could see it in the way David's face hardened whenever Toby would become overwhelmed by a loud noise or when he refused to make eye contact. She could see it in the way his patience slowly evaporated, replaced by frustration. One night, after a particularly difficult tantrum from Toby, David said the words Emma would never forget. "I can't do this. I didn't sign up for this." The next day, he was gone. "I'm sorry, Emma. I just can't," he whispered over the phone as Emma held a screaming Toby in her arms. And just like that, David had walked away. Emma often sat in the quiet of the house, wondering what she had done wrong. Why couldn't he love their son the way she did? But mostly, she felt guilty. Guilty for loving Toby so fiercely, for feeling like she was the only one who truly saw him, the boy who was so misunderstood by the world. She stood up from the porch, making her way back inside. Toby's soft humming greeted her, and she smiled at the sight of him. "Hey, baby," she whispered, kneeling beside him. He looked up at her with wide, innocent eyes, and for a brief moment, all the pain of the world disappeared. In his gaze, there was no judgment, no condemnation, just a quiet, unconditional love, but that love didn't stop the world from judging him. Toby was never invited to a birthday party or had any play dates. He was always with his toys or his loving mother, who did everything she could for him. When Emma tried to take Toby out to the store, the stares always followed. It was as if the world suddenly became aware of every flaw, every difference. The moment Toby would have a meltdown or something seemingly small, too many people, too much noise, an unexpected change in routine, the whispers would start. Emma's heart would race, her face flushing with embarrassment. She would try to calm Toby, whispering softly to him as she quickly moved away from the judgmental eyes that followed them like a shadow. At the grocery store, a woman had once coughed under her breath. She can't even control her own child. Should have raised him better. Emma had frozen in place, her breath catching in her throat. She wanted to scream, to lash out at the cruelty in that woman's words. But instead, she had simply turned and hurried away, clutching Toby's hand a little tighter. But the hardest part, the thing that broke her spirit each time, was when she tried to find a school for him. The schools she visited all gave the same response. We don't have the resources for him, or he's not ready. Emma tried to hold her composure, but inside she was crumbling. She just wanted her son to have a place where he was understood, where he could grow, but the world seemed intent on shutting him out. Why? She had cried out once. After another rejection, she had been sitting on the couch, Toby beside her, his head resting on her lap. She whispered the question to the empty room, hoping somehow that the universe would answer, but all that came was a gentle hum of Toby's voice. "Mama?" Toby said softly, looking up at her, his eyes wide and innocent. "It's okay." She had blinked back tears, her heart swelling with love for the little boy who had no idea how hard his life had become. "You're right, baby," she whispered, hugging him close. "It's okay." But it wasn't always okay. The weight of the world, the stares, the comments, the endless search for a school, it all took its toll. There were nights when Emma cried herself to sleep, her face buried in her pillow, overwhelmed by the struggle. But the next morning, she would wake up and Toby would be there, his quiet hum filling the space around them like a soft, comforting song. And somehow, despite it all, she would find the strength to keep going. Because in the end, Toby wasn't broken. He wasn't a problem to be fixed or a child to be ashamed of. He was just Toby, with his own unique rhythm, his own way of seeing the world. And Emma would love him with everything she had, every single day. The world could judge. It could whisper and stare. But Emma knew the truth that mattered more than anything else. Her son was perfect, and she would fight for him, even if the world didn't understand. Toby looked up at his mother, his eyes shining with innocence. "Mama?" he said again, his voice a soft whisper. "I love you." Emma's heart swelled as she bent down, wrapping him in her arms. "I love you too, baby," she whispered, "more than anything." It was a warm Saturday afternoon when Emma decided to take Toby to the community park. The air was thick with the scent of fresh grass, and the sounds of children laughing and playing filled the air. Toby loved the park, loved the open space, the swings, and the feeling of freedom. But Emma knew deep down that it was also a place where the world often reminded her that Toby didn't fit in. Toby was different. While the other children ran and screamed, laughing together, Toby stayed close to his mother, his fingers lightly tracing the fence as if grounding himself in its solid, comforting presence. He was content, but still, Emma could feel the eyes of the other parents on them, some curious, some judgmental. Everything seemed fine at first. Toby wandered off to a swing, his face lighting up as he climbed onto it, gently rocking back and forth. Emma sat on the bench, watching him with a soft smile. She cherished these moments of peace, moments where Toby was simply happy. But then something shifted. A group of children, their voices rising with excitement, ran past Toby, bumping into him. Toby's face immediately scrunched up in confusion. The collision had startled him, and the noise, the sudden unpredictability of it all, overwhelmed him. His eyes began to water, and his breathing quickened. He tried to hold it together, but the overwhelm was too much. He started to cry, softly at first, then louder, his small body trembling. Emma rushed to his side, her heart aching as she knelt in front of him. "It's okay, Toby," she whispered, gently touching his face with her hands, but she could feel his distress growing. She tried to soothe him, but it was clear that he couldn't articulate what he was feeling. Toby didn't have many words. He knew only a handful, often repeating them in his own way, a rhythm all his own. "Mama? Up," he said, his voice barely audible as he reached out to her, his tears falling freely. The word up was the one he used when he wanted her to hold him, when the world around him felt too big, too loud, and too foreign. Just as Emma scooped him into her arms, she heard voices behind her. A woman, a mother with a stroller, was speaking to another woman nearby. "She can't even control her kid," the woman muttered loudly enough for Emma to hear. "He's disrupting everyone, making a scene." Emma froze. She could feel the heat rising in her cheeks, but she didn't say anything at first. She just held Toby close, his small body trembling against her chest. His few words, those precious, simple words, were all he could manage to express how overwhelmed he was. "Mama, up," he said again, his voice small and shaky. The whispers grew louder. A father pushing his child on the swing next to Toby shook his head in disapproval. "That's what happens when you don't teach your kids proper behavior," he said. "What's she gonna do? Let him grow up like that?" Emma's throat tightened. She felt as if the weight of the world was pressing down on her chest, suffocating her. She turned to face the two parents, her face flushed with humiliation. She wanted to say something, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, her voice cracked as she spoke softly, trying to keep her composure. "He doesn't understand. He's not like the other kids," she said, her voice trembling. "He has autism. He's just trying to figure out the world around him." But the words felt hollow, as if they couldn't possibly convey the depth of her love for Toby, the depth of her struggle. The mother with the stroller didn't even look up, while the father's expression remained hard and cold. They said nothing. A mother who was standing close by apologized and said she didn't know. Emma's eyes blurred with tears, and she quickly turned away, cradling Toby in her arms as she made her way to the park's exit. She felt defeated. Her heart ached for Toby, for the world that couldn't see him for who he truly was, the world that didn't understand. As she walked toward the car, the tears came. She cried not just for herself, but for her son, because he would never understand why the world looked at him the way it did. Why his innocence, his quiet beauty, was met with judgment instead of acceptance. Toby nestled in her arms, rubbed his face against her shoulder, his small trembling body gradually calming. "Mama?" he said again, his voice a whisper as if to reassure her. "I love you," Emma pressed him closer, her heart breaking and mending in the same breath. "I love you too, Toby," she whispered, "and I will always love you, no matter what." She walked to the car, wiping away her tears, determined that, even if the world didn't understand, she would always be there for him. Her son, her beautiful, unique boy, who deserved all the love and understanding the world could offer, even if it couldn't yet see it. At that moment, Emma knew that she would keep fighting for Toby, for their bond, and for a world that would one day learn to embrace the beautiful differences in every child, because they are worth every struggle, every tear, and every moment of fear. And that, she knew, was more than enough. The moral of the story is that love, understanding, and acceptance are the most powerful tools when it comes to navigating challenges, especially when it comes to raising a child with special needs. The story highlights the judgments and misunderstanding that people with autism can face, but it also emphasizes the unconditional love of a mother who refuses to let the world's harshness define her son. It reminds us that every person is unique, and those who love them see their worth beyond society's expectations. The journey may be difficult, but love and support can overcome even the greatest obstacles.